The Public Philosopher with Michael Sandel. This edition, recorded in Jaipur in India, contains references to sexual violence.
Hello, my name is Michael Sandel. Welcome to a new episode of The Public Philosopher. In previous episodes, I've been in the UK and in the US to discuss with audiences some of the big philosophical questions that arise from very concrete and often pressing political issues of the day. This time, we're doing an episode of The Public Philosopher from India, from the Jaipur Literary Festival. We gather in the aftermath, the fraught aftermath in India, of a horrific crime, a gang rape and murder of a 23-year-old young woman on a bus in Delhi in December. And the aftermath has involved enormous amounts of civic activism, social movement demands that the government respond more vigorously to crimes against women, violence against women. And so today, here in Jaipur, we'll take up the question, is rape a special kind of crime? But before we turn to the question of sexual violence as such, I would like to begin by putting to you, here in the audience in Jaipur, a question about sex selection. Should parents have the right to choose in advance the sex of their child? New technology makes it possible. The use of ultrasound and sex-selective abortion is one way. And with assisted reproduction, it's now possible to choose in advance the sex of one's child, even before implantation and sometimes before conception, through embryo screening, for example. And so let me put this question to you. How many think that parents should have the right to choose the sex of their children in advance, and how many think they should not? Let's take a show of hands. How many think that parents should be able to choose the sex of their child? Not very many hands here in Jaipur. How many think they should not? The vast majority. And in fact, here in India, it's against the law to engage in sex selection, whether through sex-selective abortion or through pre-implantation or preconception sex selection methods. Let me hear from someone who believes it's wrong and should be prohibited. Yes?
Sir, because it renders the process of childbirth like a process of purchasing something, and it renders a human life like a product.
It makes a human life into a product. And why does choosing the sex of a child make human life into a product?
Sir, because it's a process which should be guided by a natural process rather than a human process where you're choosing the kind of thing you want.
Right. And tell us your name.
Abhishek Jha.
Thank you. Who disagrees? The woman sitting toward the back.
So I'm Divya, and if I decide to have a child tomorrow, it's up to me to decide which kind I want. It's a big responsibility I am taking, so I guess if I'm giving the right to life to someone, I should choose whether it's a girl or a boy. I wouldn't abort whichever I get, but I'd like to know.
And would you hope for one sex or another in your child?
No, not
You
at all.
wouldn't, but you
But
would
I
like...
can choose the name.
You could think about the name a bit earlier. That's true. What would you say?
Hi, I'm Nikita and I'm from Mumbai. If you're allowed to probably choose the sex of your child, and if you choose your child to say maybe a male child, looking at a larger picture would probably skew the sex ratio, and in the long run that would not be good, that would actually be pretty harmful. Majority of people would choose a male child, which is probably something even I might choose to do, simply looking at how difficult it is sometimes, after looking at the brutality of the crime we just spoke about, to bring up a girl child, especially if you're not doing very well and if you're in a place where your children could be exposed to that kind of brutality.
Okay, stay there. We have now two different objections to sex selection. One of them is that it would skew, or could very well skew, the sex ratio. And in fact, in India today, for every 1,000 boys, there are only 914 girls. And in some parts of northern India, the figures are in the 800s, girls relative to boys. So this bears out your suggestion that sex selection not only might, but actually has skewed the sex ratio in India. In fact, there are 37 million more men today in India than there are women.
And actually, I agree with her point. And she said she'd like to know the sex of her child. But if you're completely fair and you would like the life for your child to be easier, you might as well choose the sex of your child. It's not completely wrong looking from an individual perspective, but in the larger picture, it can be really, really harmful.
Well, this is interesting. So, given the choice, you yourself would be inclined to choose a boy.
I probably would. I'd worry a lot less. It's very selfish, but yes.
You'd worry less about the life your child would live. All right. So I want to thank you for that. That's very brave. So we've heard two objections to sex selection. One we might call the intrinsic objection, that whatever the larger social consequences, choosing the sex of a child instrumentalizes the child, turns the child into an object or a product or a commodity. And then we've heard what might be considered a consequentialist concern about skewing the sex ratio. Is there anyone who disagrees and who has a reply to these two objections? Yes.
Hello, Michael. My name is Brijesh. I'm from Jaipur itself. When the parents are biased to have a boy or a girl, and it turns out to be the opposite, irrespective of the sex, if it's a boy and it turns out to be a girl, the girl will always feel a sense of dejection, a sense of a distance between their parent, because they always wanted the opposite. So rather than suffering through this emotional distance, I would think it's more important that she or he is not born.
So parents who are disappointed may be in a certain tension.
Strictly in the Indian scenario, because people tend to be more likable to conceive a male child. And when they have girls, there's always this sense that I wish I had a boy. The girl can always feel it. So it is an injustice to the girl to make her feel that way.
And do you think in that case, if parents could choose the sex of their children, those who did choose girls would treat them better and love them more?
I believe so.
What do other people think? Who has a reply?
Yeah, my name is Sangeeta and I'm a journalist from Bombay. And it's a very valid point because I'm the second daughter in my family and my mother apparently turned her face away when they put me on her lap. And I didn't know that I'm carrying this sort of background, emotional history in my system till I met a kinesiologist. And he talked to my body the way the kinesiologist does, through touch. And he said, you have actually stored that memory in your unconscious.
Thank you for that. I want to thank everyone who's offered a view about whether sex selection should be legally permitted. I want to connect this discussion of sex selection with the question of violence against women. How many people think, just by a show of hands, that there is some connection between the growing, and it has been growing in recent decades, practice of sex selection in India and crimes against women, violence against women? Do you think there is a connection? Raise your hand if you do think there is a connection. And how many think there is not? The majority seem to believe there is some connection between the growing incidence of sex selection, the skewing of the sex ratio, and violence against women. Let's turn directly to the question of rape as a crime. Do you think that rape is worse than other forms of violent assault? How many say yes? And how many say no? The majority say that rape is worse. Why? Who can articulate? Those of you who think it's worse, why is it? Who can articulate this? Yes.
My name is Malaika. I'm from Delhi. And I've actually, read about how certain rape victims have actually said it would have been better if you'd killed me after doing this because they have to live with the stigma. I'm not saying all rape victims feel this way, but it is a violent assault, not only physically, but mentally, and unfortunately it assaults the family of the victim as well. The repercussions of that are much worse than just being dead. I'm sorry.
And explain how it affects the family.
Well, here we have this culture of bringing into the spotlight the rape victim instead of the rapist. Well, we don't have a culture of boys being taught not to rape rather than telling girls to protect themselves. So it's the family that feels like, oh my God, our child, she's gone through this incident. What will she do with her life now? Her life is ruined. There are a lot of rape victims who've actually turned this around and actually made something of their life without making their rape the central focus of it.
And is that why you think that rape is worse than other forms of violent assault?
Yes.
Would you change those family attitudes?
I would like to.
Thank you. Who disagrees? Who does not think that rape is worse than other forms of violent assault? Yes, sitting in the middle.
Hi, I'm Sucheta, and I'm from Bombay. And I think both rape and the selection of male children are both the manifestation of the fact that we are a sexually repressed society. That's what makes women think that if I lose my virginity, I've lost my life. Rubbish. If I lose my hand, I've lost my livelihood. Nobody looks at it as seriously. Why not? If I am the only daughter of my parents and I'm expected to look after them in their old age, I need to have my hands to look after them. I don't need my virginity. I wouldn't place that. I wouldn't play to the male requirement for virginity.
Do you think that the best way of overcoming the inequality of women is to assert a parallel between rape and non-sexual violent assault?
Absolutely. By giving rape that kind of importance, you're denying yourself an identity. My identity is more than my virginity. My identity is me as a person in society who can do things, create a life beyond being a virgin when I'm married. I mean, what the hell is that?
Great. Stay there. Thank you. Hold on to the microphone because I want to hear, that's a very interesting argument. I want to hear from someone who disagrees, from someone who does not think that rape is on a par with other kinds of violent assault. Who would like to respond to this question? Yes. Speak directly to Sujeta.
Hi, my name is Sabina and I'm from Mumbai. So I agree with you in part, but I disagree as well. I do believe that because I'm a woman, biologically, forceful penetration of a man into me is the most brutalist form of violence that I can possibly experience as a woman. So while I agree with the part that being a virgin is not important, rape, I feel, is assaulting my being born as a woman, because being born as a woman, I do come with a vagina and I do come with a certain physical weakness. And it is this aspect that I feel is being assaulted. I would put rape on par with a very, very brutal, violent attack against your very being, even beyond the physical. Only a woman can experience that. Unfortunately, you can't penetrate a man.
But the point, all right, I want you to be able to reply. What do you say?
I don't agree, Sabina, with the fact that you say that being a woman and having a hymen is like having a weakness. No, I wouldn't let any part of my body, any one part of my body define me so completely. I agree with you when you say that rape is a heinous crime, but then so are a lot of others. And I wouldn't put it on a pedestal. That's it.
All right. You want to avoid putting it on a pedestal. Sabina, you say, but it's beyond the physical attack, it's an attack on a woman's very being. That was the phrase you used.
Yes. I mean, being a woman, if you put me in a room with a man who is physically stronger than me, I can use my smarts to some extent to escape from his brutality. But beyond that, I cannot escape him. In a very physical situation, I am the weaker sex, I have to admit it. It's an attack against the defenseless in that sense.
Okay, thank you. I want to bring in someone else who believes that rape is a special kind of crime, worse than other kinds of violent assault. So there are others who would like to articulate a view about that.
Hi, I'm Anubhav. I'm from Delhi, and I would like to add to her point, not from personal experience, but from what I know biologically, that a man can be penetrated. And a man getting raped would be an equally humiliating point as for a girl.
Equally humiliating?
Actually, yeah. Rape is not an attack on the gender. It is an attack on the respect or the dignity that the person holds for himself. Any other violent crime, any other violence is at most an attack on the health, on the body of the person. And in the pyramid of needs or in the pyramid of the being of a person, I would rank the health or body of the person below the respect for the person himself.
So it's about respect and about dignity and identity. That's what makes it a special kind of crime?
Actually. And I would say that rape being a heinous crime, more heinous crime than any other violent crime, is actually demonstrating that the society is really mature. Are we getting down to that point that you don't want to differentiate between getting raped and getting beaten up? I have something pious in my life, and that is the respect of the women in my family. I hold it in utmost regard, and that is actually humiliating if that gets lost.
Thank you for that. Yes.
Hi, I'm Khushi, living in Delhi from Jaipur. I would like to agree with Sabina on one point that rape definitely is defined as penetration, but when I'm walking on the road and I know people passing comments, checking me out, that also, if it happens over a course of time, even that can amount to a sort of mental rape. The thing is, the man won't have the courage to come and rape me probably, but in his head he has been doing it. So there is a form of mental rape. But when she says that a woman is definitely weaker, don't you think it's also a sort of social construct? When we are brought up, we are told again and again that you are the weaker sex. The weaker sex is a social construct. And to stick to that, probably a woman does not train her body in such a manner that she will be able to defend herself in front of a man. But if we are trained in a society where women are also asked to be physically that active and train themselves, who says that a woman cannot combat a man? She probably can.
Khushi, let me ask you this. How did you answer our original question? Do you think that rape is a special kind of crime, worse than other kinds of violent assaults?
I think that very much depends on the society as well. As it was pointed out earlier, in an Indian society, if a woman is raped, her family has to suffer, and somehow they take away the right from her to live.
But now let's get to the question of what the penalty should be, what the punishment should be. Do you think that rape should be punished more severely than other forms of violent, even brutal, physical, but non-sexual, physical assault? Subhajit, why don't you address that? What do you say as far as the punishment?
I'd like to take a slightly larger view of this, starting with the rape in Delhi. Delhi has always been a bad place for women. Given a choice, I would never move from Bombay to Delhi. The reason being, Delhi is known for its attitude to women. So when this particular incident happened, I think what got most people charged was not the fact that the woman was raped, but that she was so brutally assaulted, she died. However, as an aftermath of that rape, people started with everything from lynch those guys, hang them, etc. I think that was an immediate reaction to one particular incident. And I don't think any of that will solve the problem of rape or the problem of our attitude to women in India.
All right, but I want to get back to the question of punishment. We've been discussing the moral status of rape vis-a-vis other forms of violent physical attack. And people disagree about whether they are parallel or whether they're different. But let's take by a show of hands a poll on the question of whether rape should be punished more severely than other forms of violent physical attack. How many say yes? Quite a few. How many say no? Quite a few, a large minority. Those of you who think that the punishment should not be more severe, why should it be more severe?
Yeah, hi, my name is Kaushik. I'm from Bombay, work as a journalist there. From whatever I heard, it sounded like there is this element of subjugation that I compare to other acts within Indian society like abusive slavery. A life is brought to a lower level than another life.
So the demeaning element is what makes it especially heinous.
And that somebody else's life is dependent on what you do to it, and that person doesn't have as free a reign in how their life will pan out.
So here is an emphasis on the demeaning, dominating character of the act. Yes, standing up.
Hi, thanks. My name is Amar and I'm from Delhi. To my mind, rape is the most heinous of all crimes.
The most heinous of all crimes?
To my mind, it is
more so even than murder.
It's more so heinous than all crimes. Yeah, okay. Rape is more severe because it is attacking the entire essence of what a woman is, I believe. So it is the most heinous that it could be. The problem with Indian society is that we've never treated this act with as much seriousness as it should have been treated. A murder generally has a purpose. A murder could be done as an act of revenge. Mostly it would be done as an act of revenge. Probably if somebody's being robbed and he's saving himself and he gets murdered. But the thing is, the rape is done...
I want to stop you there.
Sure.
This is a powerful... It's good. It's a powerful argument that rape, because it attacks the essence, the being, the essential identity of the woman, it's a crime even more heinous than an instrumental murder.
Sure.
Not with a targeted victim, but that may be for the purpose of, in the course of a robbery or something like that.
True, yes.
All right. Who disagrees with Amar?
I'm Trisha from Bombay. First of all, I'm against it because I think if you have a law that gives it a special status, I think the law is then sanctioning this special status of rape. If the law treats rape on par with other crimes, then automatically society will tend to look at it. I think that's a step that the government can take towards changing the attitudes of society. Also, another point, everyone's been talking about essence of women and piousness, and the thing is, when someone looks at me and says that you are a woman and let me protect you, you are special. As a woman, I don't need that. When you give me the idea of caring, you're making me a child. I'm not a child. I don't need to be taken care of. I disagree with the gentleman there from Delhi. The fact that we give rape a special status shows that a society is more mature. I think we're an extremely sexually repressed society if we give rape a special status. I think it just shows that we're a society which is giving sex far more importance than it does, and it's demeaning women by caring for us.
So we have really here emerging two different ideas about what it means to respect the equality of women. We have one view that says rape is a crime against women. It's a special kind of assault on the dignity and the identity of women. It's a special kind of humiliation and assertion of dominance. And so to respect women is to take rape especially seriously, even compared to murder, it was argued. And then on the other side, we've heard the argument that no, to respect and to aspire to true equality, it's a mistake to make rape a special kind of crime because that presupposes traditional attitudes that put women on a pedestal and attribute to them a kind of weakness. So true equality of women, respect for women, means treating rape like any other kind of brutal physical violence. Is there someone else who would like to get in on this? Yes.
Hi, my name is Vanisha and I've been living in Calcutta. I don't personally know a rape victim, but I do know someone, a girl, on whom acid was thrown on her face. She suffered 97% burns, and the girl I know passed away, but there are people who survive and have to live with that every day and every second of the rest of their lives. Rape is something that we can try to mentally move forward from and try to heal the mental harm that that would cause. But something that burns 90% of your body affects every decision for the rest of your life.
Yes.
It affects what you can do. It affects relationships that you have. It affects everything. And it's something that you can't move forward from.
Good.
And that is something that is much more a violation of bodily integrity and humiliates me whether a man or a woman does it.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I want to pursue the line of argument that we've heard that emphasizes violence against women as especially heinous because it reaches the identity, the very being, some have argued. Now, the comparison that some have made is to random acts of violence, a murder that might occur in the course of a robbery. But let's test this idea that rape is special because it involves humiliation, that it's an assault on identity, that it's about an exertion of power, and compare it to another kind of violence that arguably has similar features: sectarian violence. What about violent assaults where the targets are chosen because of their religion? Violence of Hindus against Muslims, or Muslims against Hindus. Is there a parallel between sexual violence and sectarian violence? If what makes sexual violence especially heinous, more than instrumental, random acts of violence, is to do with identity, humiliation, domination, power. Who thinks that's a bad analogy, a misplaced analogy?
My name is Vikram. I'm from Calcutta. And I'd like to say that whenever there's sectarian violence, be it in 1947 or right down to 2002, the woman becomes very important in that violence. So the violence is very sexualized. So for example, either be it a Hindu or a Muslim, they'll target the woman and, violence directed against her to assert their own cultural superiority or communal superiority. So here again, the woman becomes a marker for the other's religion and, defending a woman, assault against another community's woman. So therefore, when you're looking at sexual violence and communal violence, I don't see that as technically very different.
So sexual violence, Vikram points out, can be one expression of sectarian violence, and often is. Who thinks it's a flawed analogy?
One thing that I would really like to point out is that we are taking sexual violence only in terms of women. Why don't we consider even men being a victim of it? Because and in sectarian violence, it's not just women who are suffering, and they're not the only tools of oppression or some whatever. Kids, men who are handicapped, who get amputated because of this violent attacks. Okay, one more thing that I would like to point out is that if in an island, a man rapes a woman and there's no one else present, just that man and that woman, the effect of it and the aftermath would, I think, probably last 15 or 20 days. That's it. The reason that rape becomes so traumatic is because people are around. It's because people don't let them get over it. Because is rape just simply sexual violence or like sexual encroachment, or is it mainly a social encroachment of the woman's vagina?
Yes, go ahead.
With due respect to all the very young women who have been speaking, I'm very impressed with how brave and bold they are. But some thought has to be given to the fact of how long-lasting the effect of any violence or any trauma can be. Nobody gets over a rape in 20 days. That's not going to happen. And the fact of violation is not socially, sort of imposed upon you that you've been violated. You know when you're violated, even if you have no connection with society. So violation is a violation.
Okay. I'd like to ask a question that steps back from the matter of violence to the question of speech, harassing speech, vilifying speech. Now, in the area of speech, the law in India does provide sanctions against hate speech directed against religions. And there are punishments for blasphemy, for defamation, directed against religion. Should there be penalties similar to the ones against blasphemy, to verbal, non-physical, verbal forms of sexual harassment. How many say yes? And how many say no? The majority here in Jaipur say yes. A handful of people say no. Who says yes? Tell us why.
Hi, I'm Sakshi and I'm from Ahmedabad. Definitely, there should be punishment for verbal abuse, assault, and any sort of verbal attack on a woman, because again, it comes to her point of leveling the playing field. Unless you put a punishment and tell the society that this is wrong, it won't stop. It's the same with blasphemy and sedition, that you tell the society that it's not okay to insult someone else's religion. That in the same way, you sort of tell the society it's not okay to insult a woman. I have been sexually harassed almost twice every week or something, like really badly, when I walk down the street. I don't think that's cool. I should be able to go to a police station, tell those person that, look, there's this man who's abusing me or who's sexually harassing me, and I want that man to get punished. It's as simple as that.
Who disagrees with Sakshi? Yes.
Hi, Siddharth from Delhi. First of all, I don't think the blasphemy law is needed. Offense of any religion should not be punishable, according to me. People, unless it incites violence in the form, like there was a speech where some guy called Akbar Osawi, he said that if you remove the police, we will kill all Hindus. Then it is something punishable. If someone just says that this God is not good, I think we should be able to tolerate it.
The woman sitting on the aisle, what do you say?
So my name is Parma and I'm from Calcutta. My issue is we belong to a liberal state, and when it comes to verbal assault, the line is a grey line. There's no clear-cut distinction as what is offense and what can lead to harm. So to protect the liberal state, we need to allow freedom of speech. However, as a woman, I have experienced verbal assault and I know how degrading and demeaning that can be, but that cannot be dealt with punishment. That is a more deep-rooted social issue that has to be dealt with in a larger social and educational context.
And so you would get rid of laws against blasphemy, and you would get rid of punishment for sexual harassment of a verbal kind.
And most Indians don't know that eve teasing actually falls under the Preventive Detention Act, and where has that led us? No one cares about that act anymore.
Paroma says that in a liberal state, freedom of speech should be respected, and there should not be laws punishing either insults to religion or verbal sexual harassment of women. Okay, thank you for that, and thank you all for the contributions you've made to this discussion. We've been discussing the question of whether rape is a special kind of crime, or whether it's morally comparable to other forms of physical violence. And we discussed finally at the end the question of speech, hate speech. Should there be laws at all in a liberal society restricting speech that injures, speech that offends, speech that asserts domination, whether in the case of religion or in the case of gender, sexual harassment of a verbal kind. And throughout our discussion, we've seen two different pictures, really, of the meaning of equality, and the meaning, in particular, of the equality of women. On one picture, what it means to respect women is to break down cultural attitudes of a traditional kind that put women on a pedestal, that regard women as weak and to be protected. And many argue that the only way of breaking down those traditional attitudes is to assert morally and legally an equality of treatment toward rape on the one hand and violent physical assault in general on the other. And we had a parallel discussion with regard to speech. What does it mean to single out verbal sexual harassment for punishment? Some people argued what it means is that women are considered in need of special protection. And therefore, in a liberal state, the law should not constrain speech, even insulting speech and offensive speech. And then we've had another picture of what it means to respect the equality of women. The picture that says we have to begin from where we are, and we have to consider that, and this was a point made by someone who invoked the wisdom of years, that a pure formal equality of treatment may not be sufficiently sensitive to the way in which our identities claim us. And on this picture, what it means to work toward an equal society and a pluralist society is to acknowledge the sense in which the identity of women as women matters and demands respect. Not the respect of the pedestal, but the respect of the dignity of the human person that is somehow bound up with who in particular we are. And we saw a similar disagreement in the discussion of speech. Some say that an assault, a verbal assault on religion, or a sexual harassing verbal assault, really goes to the core of identity. It's humiliating. It's a form of domination. And that to make a society safe for pluralism, we have to take special account of those kinds of offenses. Everyone here is in favor of women's equality, and everyone is in favor of a pluralist society. But what we find when we listen closely, even to some of the fiercest arguments we have in the wake of a traumatic national event, is that different strands of political philosophy run very deep and inform the different ways we try to contend together with the aftermath of this experience. I would simply conclude by saying that the debate we've had today, the social movement, the civic activism that we've seen in the streets across India, suggests that this horrific event might be the occasion for a kind of public discourse and civic activism that reaches very far and may have the redeeming effect of making democracy more morally robust and engaged. And to listen to the discussion we've had today, we've had a good example of how philosophy is not something that inhabits the clouds, but that is very much at the heart of the city and at the heart of democratic life. And so with that, let me thank you from Jaipur for joining us in this episode of The Public Philosopher. Thank you.